Okay, in this video we will prove the following identities. So we want to prove that tan squared theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared theta. And also we'll do another problem. 1 minus sine squared x divided by cosine x is equal to cosine x. So let's tan squared theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared theta. And so instead of saying tan squared theta, we can use this identity. Tan theta is equal to sine theta divided by cosine theta. And so that would mean sine squared theta divided by cosine squared theta plus 1 is equal to this. But we're going to prove this. So the next step is we want to get a common denominator. So the common denominator could be cosine squared theta. So we would get sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta divided by cosine squared theta. So if you look at this, sine squared theta divided by cosine squared theta is this. Cosine squared theta divided by cosine squared theta would give us 1. And so we will use another identity. So the second identity is this. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is equal to 1. So let me scroll down. And so therefore we could say that 1 divided by cosine squared theta, we simply replace sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta with 1. And so instead of saying 1 divided by cosine squared theta, we'll use another identity. So we know that 1 divided by cosine theta is equal to secant theta. And so therefore this right here would give us secant squared theta. And now we will go back to our original problem statement. So we want to prove that this right here would give us secant squared theta. And we just did. So now for the second problem. Second problem is this. 1 minus sine squared x divided by cosine x is equal to cosine x. So let's get started for this one. And so we'll do the exact same approach. We will make this equal to cosine x. So what we can say now is 1 minus sine squared x. Instead of saying that, we can look at this identity. And so we would get, let me just write it down, 1 minus sine squared x divided by cosine x. And now we have one identity that we can replace. So 1 minus sine squared x. So this is very close. This means cosine squared theta is equal to 1 minus sine squared theta. And so we will simply replace it. So we could say that this right here would be cosine squared x. So we would get cosine squared x divided by cosine x. And just to recap, 1 minus sine squared x is very close to this. If we rearrange this, we would get cosine squared theta is equal to 1 minus this term right here. And that's why we replace this with cosine squared theta. So cosine squared x divided by cosine x. We could cancel out the cosine x in the denominator, and we would be left off with cosine x. And so we just verified that this would in fact give us cosine x. And that's all we need to do to verify these trig identities.